Hey, this is Gary.
This is Mike.
And Daniel. We're not professionals. We're just three addicts sharing our experiences, strength, and hope regarding recovery.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in our lives.
Welcome to another episode of the 12th Step Podcast. This is Mike.
And this is Gary.
And this is Daniel.
So good to be together again.
Isn't it, though?
Yes. We've had some technology glitches already to start, but so we've already started mocking Daniel at a very early hour here, but I think we'll get the hang of it as we go on.
I'm a redheaded stepchild. It becomes the norm.
We're going to respond to an email that has been sent to us, and this is a great question. I really like this, so I think we'll just go ahead and start with this. Hello, 12th Step Podcast. Thank you for the conversations you bring to light on recovery. They've been encouraging and eye-opening. I'd like to ask about a topic that weighs heavily on me and I'm sure on many others. When it comes to sexual addiction, the pain isn't carried by the person struggling alone. It often deeply wounds spouses, partners, family, and friends. The lies and secrecy and the broken trust can leave scars that feel almost impossible to heal. Isn't that the truth? He's certainly singing a song we all understand. My question is, how does someone in recovery begin the process of making amends for the hurt they've caused the people closest to them? What does healthy, honest amends look like in this kind of situation, and how do you balance wanting to repair a relationship with respecting the fact that others may not be ready or willing to forgive? I'd really appreciate your perspective on this. It feels like one of the hardest and most important parts of the recovery journey. Sincerely, Garrett. I think he's, again, I believe that this is certainly a comment that we hear many fellow addicts discuss and struggle with, and I think that it is, without a doubt, it's a big topic. Thoughts before we jump. What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, I think that before you kind of jump into this, that you have to have a really clear understanding of what an amend is. When you're making amends, what that is and what that means. I think too often we get trapped in the mindset that we're trying to make things like they were,
Right.
Or you're trying to make things better. But I think it's a much more practical, healthier way to look at it, to understand that the relationship that you have, whatever it was, is over. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, you're starting it over. That doesn't mean that there weren't elements or good things that you can't take along or can also move forward with you, but to amend something means that you're making a change or adding to it, and the reality of it is there's a reason why there's a step 8 and a step 9,
Right?
Yeah.
And you need to realize that step 8 in a lot of cases might be all you get. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to accept that, and that can hurt too, because some people might not want to give you the opportunity. And that's, they get a vote.
Yeah,
right. And if you beat yourself up, you'll, I don't know, you can just get mired down in that. Yeah,
there's no progress in that.
No, and I think the other thing to add to that is that happens on their timetable, not yours.
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah, because every addict wants to rush through that. Like, I'm going to do this, but realize, like you said, some are just going to say no, and those that will say yes, it's going to be when they're ready. Mm-hmm. With my oldest daughter, I had to wait till she was ready.
Right.
That took 4 years. Mm-hmm. And in that time we weren't communicating or anything like that. So, and if I had tried to push that, it probably would have prolonged that even longer. So those are the things you need to take into account is, yes, you want to do this and it's great, but they have to be to a point where they're ready to be receptive. And if they're not, it's just going to blow up.
Yeah. And reality of it is that, if you are sincerely wanting these other people to heal or recover, sometimes that means that you need to not be part of the equation.
Yeah.
It's true.
Because I got to think of how to say this. There are people in my life, they're no longer in my life, but there were people that were hurt by my actions, and I really miss their fellowship. I would have loved to have found a way to recover that, or to somehow get the opportunity to continue to be their friend or their associate, and it just couldn't happen.
No.
Whether it wouldn't have been healthy for me or for them, or whatever that may have looked like. And you've got to mourn that loss and move forward, and that's hard. But if you genuinely care, what kind of the sad thing is there are a couple of people that I look and I think, I didn't understand how to be a good friend to you until it was too late.
Yeah, that's
some
truth to that.
And
I've been thinking about this a bit, and I came to the conclusion, I think, that, and he runs a list here, right? Garrett points out a couple: spouses, partners, families, friends, things like that. And I honestly believe that the best thing I can do to make amends is to work on my own recovery.
oh, for sure.
I have found that those relationships, those people who love us most, who have been hurt the most by our acting out behaviors, are, first of all, they're very forgiving, but secondly, they know what they want, and they'll know it when they see it. And so the point being is that the more I spend on focusing on my recovery and really navigating that process, the deeper that recovery process becomes for me, they heal.
They might not even know how to articulate what they want yet.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so, and I'm not in a position in my unhealthy mindset at that point in time to really be able to help them articulate or work through any of that.
Right.
What really happens in my experience, this is my own experience, and I believe everyone else I really know of, those who really work solidly on their recovery, that those relationships will find a way to mend as we spend time with them. Because if they don't abandon us, right? That's assuming family won't abandon us, or that our loved ones won't abandon us. But the point being is that if I get real serious about my recovery, and I don't see it as being just checking the box, right? I love Patrick Carnes' example in one of those books where he talks about, a really highly successful individual who was given the book to read, and I think he read it overnight and then came back and said, I'm done, and what else is there kind of stuff. That's not recovery. That's just checking through things. And I think in my experience, when I really got serious about recovery, it wasn't necessarily attending a meeting every single day, even though that was helpful in times. It's more about how am I really focusing on affecting me and making significant changes in my life. And when those things happen for me, I found that the relationships I was concerned about came back.
Right. Yeah, and that's another piece to that. Part of your work is you have to put yourself in a situation where you're open to them coming back when they're ready.
Yeah.
I mean, because the reality of it is you can get yourself worked up and become bitter or resentful.
Absolute truth.
Toward them.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is that I think when you're thinking of somebody else, when you're thinking of their needs, as opposed to framing it as, okay, let me start over. All right. You have to do your recovery work for you.
Absolutely.
At the same time, when you're trying to make amends or build relationships or things like them, it can't be about you.
No.
Correct.
Which is difficult.
Which is really difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
So you have to, I always like to use the example of, if you want people to trust you, then you have to be trustworthy and trust them.
Yes.
The rest is up to somebody else. But that works with being liked or loved or respected or whatever it is. You can only be respectable and give respect. The rest is up to somebody else.
Right.
And in step 8, you have to become willing to make amends. I'm sure that there are a number of people I'm willing to make amends to, but I will never get the opportunity.
Right.
I'll never get the chance in this life to sit down with them and say, I'm so sorry.
Right.
And I'm sure that some of them, that wouldn't even be a welcome experience. They wouldn't want that. It might cause more harm.
Right.
But I would want to keep myself in a position that I would be willing to, that my door is open to that possibility, so that if I get the opportunity to do step 9 work with those people, that I can do that. And then I also think as addicts, we're really bad at understanding boundaries.
Absolute truth.
You know what I mean? And the reality of it is every relationship, no matter what it is, has to have a framework of boundaries in order for it to function.
Yes.
You know, I'm reminded of a conversation that you and I had once. Okay.
This isn't going to go well for me. I want to
No,
out right
no.
now.
It was interesting because you said something, and I'll share that. Okay. So we were in a group setting. We were in a group therapy setting, and we were talking, and you said, "I don't have any friends."
I remember this.
And I remember looking at you thinking, well, what am I?
You didn't just think it. You said it.
I did.
You
I
did
said,
say, what am I? Chopped
what am
liver?
I? Yeah. And, and that kind of stung and that found a home. But it's kind of interesting that as I've gone through recovery, my own recovery, I'm, by my personality, I'm a very open person. Okay. I'm ready. And okay, so this is kind of a weird double-edged sword, because this is something that I'm really learning about myself, even in real time. My sexual addiction destroyed my perception of a lot of boundaries.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Because I was willing to become, physically intimate with somebody and have no idea who they were or whatever. But,
Right.
but that destroys a lot of boundaries, or exercising no boundaries at all.
Yeah.
So even as a consequence, I've noticed in myself that I have a very skewed perception of what personal space is.
Right.
If people get close to me, it doesn't bother me. I barely notice it. No, really, it doesn't.
That's fascinating, because I'm experiencing very similar.
You know what I
very
mean?
similar
If somebody, if somebody were to touch me, on the arm, or even if I don't know this person, I might not even register that they've really done it. It's not going to affect me.
Right.
But other people, it would make them very, very uncomfortable. In fact, I noticed this, just recently, where I was talking to somebody and I work in retail. And so this person kept touching me while I was reaching out and across the counter and touching my arm or whatever while we were talking. And I was just selling. I didn't perceive that I was doing or saying anything that was really inappropriate. And this person was just really quite forward and friendly.
Right.
But it wasn't after that person left, the person that I was working with said, "Didn't that bother you?" And I said,
What?
What?
Exactly.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Because it didn't. And, in retrospect, looking at it, I thought, maybe that should have bothered me,
Right.
And it's not, and I don't think that I was in a mental place where I was enjoying it or encouraging it
Sure.
or anything like that.
Sure.
But I recognized, I thought, oh, my perception of boundaries are kind of skewed. Now, I've also found out that I'm a very open person by my nature. So I'm willing to talk about very intimate things pretty readily,
Yeah.
And the reality of it is that something that therapy has taught me and rewarded me for was to be open.
Sure.
So as I've begun to mentor people or make, air quotations, friends with people, it's like, maybe I am way more open, way too fast than I should be.
Yeah.
And that's not going to register with me very quickly. So this is, so then I thought, because I was feeling bad the other day, I thought, I really don't have any friends. And then I thought about Mike's thing, and I thought, I wonder if I know what a friend is.
That's fascinating that
You
you're
know-
experiencing. That was several years ago.
Yeah.
That was a Sage 2 experience. It was at least 4 or 5 years
But
ago.
see, my whole world up until recently
Right.
has just been in recovery, and that's just kind of this weird
Right.
open lifestyle. I mean, with you guys, it's like, well, what are you doing? Are you lying? You got to be honest. You got to live this examined life.
Yeah. Sure.
And so it's really hard as I recover and go back out. It's like, oh, wait a minute. People don't. That's
They don't experience friendships in the way that yeah.
So it's like, as I'm creating new friendships or new work associations, I've got to think, I've got to be really careful because I don't necessarily understand where that line is
Right.
maybe as clearly as I should. Does that make
That
sense?
makes complete sense. Yeah.
So I to bring it back around to what we were talking about, as you're making amends with these things, with people, you're recreating this relationship. So the boundaries and things like that you were operating, or the assumptions that you were operating under before, aren't
No, they're
accurate
not.
to the situation anymore.
That's true.
But you're gonna want to default to those things all the time.
Right. That makes complete sense, yeah. Particularly as he contemplates his relationship with his spouse or family and friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What those relationships that, particularly in an addict relationship, those are unhealthy. Those are unhealthy relationships, and having to pull that back now and bring it back to, in a recovery situation, entirely different boundaries.
I remember.
Very fascinating.
I don't want to dominate this conversation, but
You're fine.
But I remember another instance with my wife and my second son and myself. And my wife and I, as recovery started, this was quite early. We started getting along quite well, but my son wasn't ready to let me back into his life. But nor was he really ready to allow us to be back together either. It really bothered him.
Wow.
That we were getting along, or that she was trusting me so quickly. And so that was also Now I'm happy to say that,
It's not that way
it's
anymore.
not that way
Yeah.
anymore. But that was something that I didn't think. In fact, I remember he told me later about the situation, and I remember that particular situation and thinking that, it'll be a good thing for my son to see us because we're getting together. And I in my world, I thought that was going to be a good thing. But for him, it's like, no, that's
Trauma.
Yeah, that's not. I'm not ready for that. I don't think you're ready for that.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? So
It's fascinating, the two of the three of us sitting at this table, where we were just fortunate that our spouses were willing to stick with us through all that period of time and work through those awkward situations of navigating a relationship. I mean, I know full well in your particular situation, Daniel, where you didn't get that opportunity per se, and you're experiencing maybe some of that now. So but it's fascinating to really understand those boundaries. In my particular situation, my wife and I had a chance to kind of work together on understanding what those boundaries looked like and what was acceptable and what was not. But you're right. When I told her that I was a sex addict, that the marriage that I once knew, the relationship that I once had was now over, and it was all new from there forward. And so we just and the idea of boundaries and what a healthy relationship would look like and all of that stuff is an ongoing work in progress.
Yeah.
I really thought about Daniel. I'm prompting you to say something because with Daniel's situation, and with your kids, you had
Yes.
to, in fact, you're still taking it on their terms. And
I mean, yeah. I mean, boundaries is something that's had to be extremely important.
Right.
Like I said about my oldest daughter, I was not allowed at her wedding. That was a hard boundary that was put in
Very
place.
difficult, yeah.
It was hard. And it was challenging because that's something I wanted to be at. And she was constantly placing boundaries, and I, because of going through recovery and SAGE and doing the step work, I respected those boundaries. And honestly, that probably was one of the biggest things that really helped, other than my son-in-law, which is amazing, because he's gone through and he's like, well, wait a minute. Because he's kind of been dissecting things. He's kind of got that analytical mind. And so he's like, well, this doesn't make sense because, this person's saying this, you laid this boundary down. He respected that. He didn't cross the boundary. He didn't push. And these were hard things, this isn't making sense. Fast forward, my other daughter just recently got married, and there was a bunch of boundaries that got thrown on me. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can be there, but you can't do this and this, which was hard. I couldn't walk her down the aisle. I couldn't do the daddy-daughter dance. I couldn't do these things because other people were influencing her, but I had these boundaries. And I'm like, all right, it sucks, but I'm going to obey these boundaries. And then, the ceremony's over. Again, another person influencing comes over and says, you need to ask him to leave now. And again, my son-in-law's like, why? He's doing everything you're asking. Why should he leave? And again, he talks sense into my other daughter. So I got to stay throughout the entire reception, even though people were continually going up to her, you need to ask him to leave. And she finally said, my daughter finally snapped, like, why? He's doing everything you've asked.
Wow.
And so as hard as it is, those boundaries have saved me. And they've been very effective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so coming out of that situation, your daughter and your son-in-law are going to trust you more because
Oh yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, my oldest daughter is talking to me constantly. My son-in-law is as well. Last weekend I drove down to where they live, and we went to dinner for his birthday. And because with her mom, my other ex, she's causing problems. He's like, "Are you sure you want to do dinner with him? Because isn't that going to cause a problem?" She's like, "Well, why not? He's the only one that seems to take interest in when your birthday is and actually has asked about it and has a present for you and wants to spend time. Like, my mom hasn't."
Wow.
And so, those things, that time I've invested in, getting to know him and having those boundaries has proven time and time again that despite what everyone else is saying about me, what I'm doing, my actions are proving otherwise. I don't have to say anything because my actions are proving that, which is what those boundaries have helped for. And it made it so that when she finally came to me after 4 years of silence, she's like, because we went through a custody evaluation and I got custody of them, but their mom has told them that I lied and my way through that and stole them, which is kind of weird because a court gave them to me. But she asked me for the evaluation report, and she'd already asked her mom. Her mom, like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And she asked me for it, and I'm like, "Here it is. Read it. You're an adult. If you have questions, come to me. I'm not going to try to sway you either way."
Mm-hmm.
And she's come back saying that was the biggest thing ever, because I wasn't trying to sway her into seeing anything in there. It was read it, come back, and then we'll have a discussion about this. And that's how it's been, and we continue to have discussions. And there's other things that have come up that their mom has said, and I'm like, I'll come to her and I'll state my side, and then she'll go investigate other things, and she'll come back and say, "I appreciate you being honest," because I have been. It's not, I'm not trying to hide anything. It's like,
Right.
Nope, that's a boundary I don't want to cross with her, because
Right.
I know if I do, we're probably going to slide back down that hill. Maybe not clear back to zero, but far enough that she might not trust me again for a while. And so those boundaries are important.
I think the message that really is coming out of here is that you continue working your recovery and those
Yeah.
relationships
No,
heal. That's
Yeah.
literally what it's all about.
And it takes time.
And it takes
Yeah.
time.
And you have to
Yeah.
be patient.
And I
So
think
patient.
the answer is, like, how does someone in recovery begin the process of making amends? Start with step 1.
That's right.
Go to step 2. By the time you hit 9, you're going to know who you can and who you can't. Definitely be in therapy.
Yes.
I mean, that's been huge for me. And again, you got to wait for them to open the door. With my daughter, after she read that, that's what opened the door. Because she had seen the boundaries were respected. I didn't try to sway her one way or another. And when she was ready, she's like, "Can we talk?"
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked, and then that's when I broached the subject. I'm like, "I'd really like, to say I'm sorry and make an amends to you. And is that something you'd be willing to do?" And she's like, "Not yet." And it was like 2 months later, and she's like, "You asked me that." And she's like, "I'm ready."
And see,
That's remarkable.
Yours is such a good example of what I'm trying. Your story is such a good example of what I'm trying to illustrate. Is that it would have been very, very easy for you to feel cheated or hard done by or insulted or bitter because you're trying to do these things. But if you got to take life on life's terms, and if you try to control the outcome, if you try to control the timing, then you're creating a different kind of problem that compounds it.
Well, and that's part of the problem when I was married, is because of all the chaos going on, I was trying to control things, and there was sometimes I would come down too hard. And like one daughter, her grade was a D, and I went down and I just ripped
Lost it on
into
the
her, and
teacher.
I just went off, and she's like, "I already turned everything in. It's a B now." And then I'm like feeling like crap, and
Right.
like gum on the bottom of my shoe, because I didn't take the time to, like, "Hey, I saw this. What's going on?" I just dove in yelling, and if I would have just gone down there and said, "Hey, I saw this. What's going on?" She could have said, "Well, yeah, I was behind. I turned everything in. It's a B now," and everything would have turned out so much different. She wouldn't
I
have been
think
crying. She
we've
wouldn't
all
have been
got some
upset.
of those
Yeah.
embarrassing family moments. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it, right? I think each one of us, at least in my addictive behavior, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I jumped in when I shouldn't have.
I think it's also really fair to observe, just at this table, that we're all still making amends.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
We're
Years in our recovery.
years and years
still,
into the recovery, we're still making amends because hopefully every time I get a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but sometimes experience is what you get 2 seconds after you need it.
That's right.
Like your
Yeah.
example, Daniel. And you got to be willing to do your step 8 and step 9 work over and over and over again, as long as it.
Well, and I'm still working on my kids. Like my
Yeah.
middle son, still not. Like we're barely talking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're talking more, but we're just barely. Like we're not even to a point where he can even listen to an amends. And my daughter that just recently got married. Yes, I've already done it, but I wonder if I need to do it again. If there's something I've missed, because she's kind of circled back into the mom circle a little bit.
Well,
But-
it's an open, ongoing conversation.
It
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is. He makes an observation in this that I think
Mhm.
deserves some attention. The lies, the secrecy, and the broken trust can leave scars that feel almost impossible to heal. We've all felt that.
Oh, yeah.
We understand that. We feel that. We certainly have left those scars ourselves and understand that completely. The fascinating thing, I remember a comment that our common counselor had mentioned one time. He said, the mortal existence is certainly not, everybody's going to come through with some sort of scar.
Yeah.
Right? There is no security in the mortal existence in any way, shape, or form, which means we're going to all feel some scars, whether it's from family or whatever. The secret to it more than anything is giving space sufficiently to allow those wounds to heal, because
Yep.
they're not like a cut where we can see the actual progress that's going on. They're not visible to us, but giving the space to spouse, to family, to friends, wherever it's necessary to let them find the peace and start to heal.
Yeah.
But I think they're gonna feed, the rate at which that heals is gonna really feed off of how serious we are about our recovery
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
And that really develops then into what you've already talked about, and that is that what is an honest recovery begin? When does that really look like? He talked about that as my question. My question is, when does someone in recovery begin the process of making amends for the hurt they've caused? There will be a very natural moment in that.
Yeah.
My experience with that is there will be a natural moment with that. The great thing about having a counselor involved in the process is it allows then it allows for a full disclosure. It allows for the effect of all of that disclosure. It allows for us being able to write some letter indicating, what do we need to do to amend. All that stuff is covered by a counselor. So having a counselor involved in the process is a big deal as well.
Yeah.
Have we talked about the 3 tiers of forgiveness?
No,
No,
We
haven't.
talked about that at all?
no.
I don't
Okay.
think we have.
All right. Shane, our common counselor, he's been on this before.
Yes.
He said something once to me that really stuck with me. He says, sometimes you have to accept the apology that you'll never get.
Yep. I've heard him say
Yes.
that many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are 3 types of forgiveness, and they're kind of tiered. Okay. One of them is exoneration, which means that when you receive this kind of forgiveness, everything is as it was before. All things are restored. You're back in full fellowship, full trust.
Yeah.
Everything as it was before. And that's what we normally think of when we say forgiveness. That's what kind of conjures into our mind. The second type is forbearance. This is the trust but verify. And more commonly with the people who want to stick with us, this is what we're going to get first before we get to the exoneration.
Yeah.
We have to go through this forbearance thing where they're going to watch us.
Yep.
Yes.
They're going to watch our actions. They're going to listen to our words, and we're going to see if we're consistent
And congruent.
and congruent.
Yeah.
The other one is called release. Okay, and this is where you forgive the person but let them go. I don't want anything to do with you in my life, but I'm going to let that go and I'm going to move on. Okay. Now, I think it's important to remember, because many, many times in our lives, we're going to be required to forgive people, and we might be able to, it might be a situation where you can do a little bit of forbearance and then get to exoneration. But sometimes you just have to release that
Yeah.
Yes.
person. I'm just going to let go of these negative feelings, and I'm going to let you go. but I'm not going to have anything else to do with you. And so taking that concept of forgiveness and then kind of learning to accept the apology that I might never forget, and I think about some of these people that I've harmed or caused harm to that I would really like to make amends to.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be willing to accept the level of forgiveness that I'm going to be given.
Right.
And in many of those cases, it's release.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then in turn, I have to do the same thing and just say, okay, then, as much as I would like to be exonerated with all of the people that I've ever harmed, I'm willing to make those amends. I'm willing to say and do the things that I need to say and do. But if the best that they can give me is to release me of that, then I have to learn to accept that gratefully.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If they're going to give me some forbearance, then I have to accept that gratefully and then work with it.
Yeah.
If they're going to give me some exoneration, then I have to treasure that and defend it. You know what I mean? And be worthy of it.
Yeah. I was just thinking in some circumstances, though, just as the steps point out, that literally it's healthy. It's really the healthiest situation when the forgiveness is I've got to forgive and forget.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, I think of those I harmed with some of my acting out behaviors and think that, first of all, I don't think it'd be healthy for me to go back to any of those people and say, hey, I'm so sorry, or any of that sort of stuff. As the steps point out, that's not a place or an appropriate thing to be doing for either them or me. And I think that's relevant. That really is important. But to know that the ultimate response to all of that needs to be, assuming I did get to the place where I had a conversation with some of those, that complete release is exactly where it needs to be, because it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy to go any further with that. So it's a great question. It's a great question. I think, and I really appreciate the fact that Garrett, wrote in and asked this particular question, because it certainly was worth exploring.
Do you think we got lost in the weeds, or do you think we...
No, I think we got most of it. I mean, the point I would really put on there is you don't have any control of this process.
No. They get a vote.
They get a vote. It's totally up to them, and this could be a lifelong thing. You know, it's not something that you're going to be able to do in a year. It's not something that's done in 6 months. For me, one daughter was 4 years, another one was a year. Like, I'm still working on a son. There's still other people that I haven't been able to talk to.
Yeah.
There's some people that I may never. My ex is one of those ones that is more on the release side.
Right.
I probably never will, and I have to accept that and let that go.
Let that go.
There are probably others. There are others that I know of, but they've passed away, and I'll never get that opportunity.
Right.
And so those are some of the things you're going to have to factor in. That even if they say I don't want to, that doesn't mean you're not on the right track. That just means they get to decide, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you in. You've hurt me too much. I'm not letting you inside the wall. And then you accept that with gratitude and move on.
Move on.
And do you know what? You're going to have to forgive those people too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then I had one other thought. It'll come back to me in a second.
Well, I'm going to just add that I appreciate that perspective, because I've been at this now for a little over 8 years, and I'm just now starting to establish a bit of a conversation with some of my children, and that's a space that I have left purposely alone, and I'm finally to a place where we're relationship-wise we're starting to move into some of the direction that I think is appropriate, and we can have an adult conversation about my behaviors and some of that thing. But it's taken 8 years. As far as mending those relationships to arrive at that spot. So this is a great conversation, a great question, and I appreciate, your insights, obviously, both of your insights of where you've been and what's happened.
All right, I've remembered it.
Fantastic.
Okay, you also need to understand that there are a lot of times that you just have to surrender some of this stuff to your higher power.
Yes. Yep. That's a great point.
I've done what I can. I'm willing to do more, but I'm not going to get that opportunity. You're going to have to take this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I did with my daughter. Like, I didn't think it would ever happen. And I'm just like, if this is going to happen, I'm giving it over to you to make that happen, because I can't. Yeah. And it became possible. But your higher power is the only one that's going to really be able to make that change. Because if I would have tried saying, hey, it's been 4 years, let's try to talk.
Yeah.
No, it just would have been a wall of anger.
Sure.
And then it would have been a mess. But I definitely turned it over to him, and it happened. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
fantastic.
the other thing to point out is that this isn't something that you do and that you're done with.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Oh, no.
I think
is
we're
a
all
lifelong
evidence
thing,
of that.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've got various levels of recovery here at the table, and it's fascinating to hear our own stories
Yeah.
saying, my word, here we are still dealing with this.
Do you know what the beauty of growing is? You know, you get a little bit wiser, and then you think, oh, well, now I know better, and now
Now I have to do better.
wait, there are some things that I should probably go apologize for.
Yeah. But yeah, no, my daughter's still always watching, you know,
Yeah,
and
as she should.
you know,
As
and
she
I'm
should.
sure my other kids are watching, and other people that I've made amends to are watching.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to be something that's ever going to go away.
No, it's not.
Because the trust was broken. They just want to keep. They just
wanna be
need me to
safe.
keep verifying that
wanna
they
be
are safe. Yeah.
They want to be safe, and that's a respectable position to
Yep.
be in. They
Yeah,
want
it
to be
is.
safe. I can respect that.
Yeah.
So
And you should be grateful for it too.
That's
As
right.
long as they're continuing to give you that opportunity, even a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
It's not
a
nothing.
gift.
Yeah,
It's a gift.
It is a gift.
So
hopefully we've answered Garrett's question.
I think so. What a great place to end.
Yes.
What a great place to end. This has been a fantastic discussion. So thank you all. With that, this is Mike saying, do the work necessary to find the peace that recovery can bring.
And this is Gary saying, do the next right thing.
And this is Daniel saying, find the humility in your recovery.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.
As a fellowship of recovering addicts, Sex Addicts Anonymous offers a message of hope to anyone who suffers from sex addiction. Check out saa-recovery.org.